The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
He wants to bring lasting peace to Europe. He doesn't just want to stop it now and have the war restart a month from now.
3 years into the Russian-Ukraine war, is peace on the horizon? What President Trump is asking for to end the conflict. Prison problems in New York, what the governor has to say about an ongoing strike that could threaten inmate security. And racial disparities in cancer diagnoses, what a new report reveals about the troubling risk associated with one specific minority. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. President Donald Trump wants the war between Russia and Ukraine to end, and he wants it to end soon. Newsweek says that according to a member of the European Parliament, the president has given Europe just 3 weeks to get behind, as he calls it, Ukraine's surrender. Included in the message was a threat that the United States could leave Europe militarily. All of this as President Trump's special envoy to Ukraine was meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv today. But the White House isn't making any new commitments to remain on Ukraine's side as it seeks an end to the war. The National News Desk's Atra El-Nashar reports from Washington.
A fraught moment for the U.S.-Ukraine alliance.
President Trump is obviously very frustrated right now with President Zelensky that he hasn't been willing to take this opportunity that we have offered.
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz referring to a pitch the Trump administration made to Ukraine's president. Give the U.S. 50% of his country's rare earth minerals in exchange for continued U.S. support.
At the very moment that you're being undermined by your biggest ally by taking away negotiating points, you're going to be forced to sign a deal with no negotiation in terms of your mineral rights.
Hours earlier, President Zelensky and President Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, met in Kyiv. Zelensky thanked him and said his team is ready to work 24/7. Despite bipartisan backlash, President Trump doubling down on what he said in this social media post Wednesday. A dictator without elections, Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. It left the Russians pleased. Dmitry Medvedev, former president and prime minister, still one of the most powerful men in Russia, replied, "If you'd told me just 3 months ago that these were the words of the U.S. president, I would have laughed out loud."
It's time for elections. Haven't had an election in a long time. It's wonderful to say, we can't have an election, but it's time for elections.
In spring 2024, Ukrainian elections were postponed to maintain martial law. A poll by the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology at the time found only 15% thought elections should have proceeded. Many feared a power vacuum would make Ukraine even more vulnerable. Republican Congressman Don Bacon says he thinks what President Trump said is wrong and a shame.
The president needs a do-over day and start again. He took a bad turn. Zelensky was rightfully elected. He is under martial law, and they have under their constitution that they can postpone their elections while under martial law.
European leaders hoping to bring the United States back in line with the rest of NATO. Both the president of France and UK's prime minister will travel here to meet with President Trump next week.
And Atra, National Security Advisor Waltz, he was in the briefing room today and he gave more insight on the president's latest thinking on the issue. So what did we learn?
Well, Amir, one of the biggest items to come out of Waltz's remarks is that the president is not making any effort to clean up his comment that Ukraine is responsible for Russia's invasion. Waltz was asked directly, who is more responsible in Trump's mind, Putin or Zelensky? And Waltz just did not answer. Instead, he said the president's focused on the war ending. Now, Waltz was also asked if President Trump also considers Putin to be a dictator. He called Zelensky a dictator, and Waltz just did not answer.
Well, certainly a different position than President Biden's position, that's for sure. All right, thank you so much, Atra El-Nashar, reporting out of Washington, D.C.
The yeas are 51. The nays are 49. The confirmation is confirmed.
The FBI has a new director as the Senate confirms Donald Trump's nomination of Kash Patel to lead the Bureau for the next 10 years. Republican Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski joined all Democrats in opposition. Mitch McConnell, who has voted against several Trump appointees, supported Patel as FBI director. Senator McConnell also made it official today that he will not run for re-election next year. McConnell was first elected to the Senate in 1984 and is the longest serving Senate party leader in U.S. history. He stepped down from leadership last year after multiple medical incidents, including freezing up during news conferences and several falls.
7 times, my fellow Kentuckians have sent me to the Senate. Every day in between, I've been humbled by the trust they placed in me to do their business right here.
McConnell was given a standing ovation by many of his colleagues following that speech. Today is also his 83rd birthday. He says he will serve the remainder of his term ending in January of 2027. The IRS is in the process of laying off around 6,000 employees as the Trump administration continues making significant cuts to the federal workforce. The layoffs mostly affect employees hired under President Biden and amount to around 6% of the agency's staff. Thousands of federal employees have been laid off since President Trump took office a month ago. The administration is now facing more than 70 lawsuits over its executive orders, memos, and other actions, according to Axios. Most of these cases relate to the federal workforce, followed by immigration, government funding, and transgender rights. Dozens of court rulings have already halted some executive orders. Many cases will likely end up at the Supreme Court. New tonight, one suspect being held for questioning after a suspicious package was brought to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office in Miramar, Florida. The building was evacuated and placed on lockdown this morning. At least one employee was taken to the hospital after fainting inside the building before the hazmat team arrived. The building was cleared, and there is no further threat to public safety. Several upstate New York prison guards have been charged with murder relating to the death of a prisoner in December. Governor Kathy Hochul said today that Robert Brooks should be alive and those involved will be fired and prosecuted. She did not name nor did she say how many guards are being charged. Robert Brooks was assaulted by the guards while in custody in a medical room late last year. He was handcuffed at the time. He later died at the hospital. And tonight, National Guard troops on deck to help secure state-run prisons in New York during a wildcat strike by corrections workers. Picketing and striking by officers began yesterday morning and has already expanded to at least 25 prisons across the state, leaving facilities with a critical shortage in security. The National News Desk's Carly Miner spoke with a Groveland correctional officer's wife who says they want change.
So you're not taking care of the issue, you're putting a Band-Aid on it.
Trina's husband is a correctional officer at Groveland Correctional Facility.
That's not what we signed up for in our marriage when we had when we started a family, and with our husbands being gone, you know, the overtime doesn't even matter. Like, the money in the bank account is nothing compared to having my husband home.
That's mostly why Trina says these strikes began.
They've taken this job because of the flexible scheduling and the time that they are able to, mold their schedules around their family. And at this point, like, they can't do that at all.
Approximately 30 correctional facilities have protests outside their locations or have officers refusing to enter the prisons for their shifts, according to the officers union, which has not authorized the protests.
This honestly has nothing to do with incarcerated individuals in jail. This is between the corrections officers and the governor and the commissioner not holding to their word and not keeping the officers safe.
A list of demands prepared on behalf of the COs were presented to the Department of Corrections.
And in this contract that was just signed within the past year, there were clauses that allowed officers to work voluntary 24-hour shifts. Unfortunately, it has not been voluntary. It has become mandatory on a regular basis. They work more 24-hour shifts in a week than more hours in a week, I should say, than I work in a month.
Besides mandated overtime, the 2022 HALT Act is another priority. The law limits the use of solitary confinement and prohibits it from anyone who is pregnant, has a disability, is younger than 21, or older than 55.
It's not doing any of the victims justice, whether it be staff or on inmate. You know, when an inmate has an assault on another inmate, there's no consequence there. That's on the governor and the commissioner to keep all of the people safe, specifically the wards of the state, which are the inmates.
That was Carly Miner reporting. We are learning today about another thwarted threat to a public school where police were tipped off. 2 teen girls arrested by the FBI earlier in the week, allegedly for planning to place pipe bombs at Memorial High School in a Houston, Texas suburb. Their identities have not been released because they are minors. One was a former student at the high school. The other attended a different high school. The school remains on high alert, but no further threats have been identified. An entire police department could be abolished in Huntsville, Alabama. This after a grand jury there issued indictments against 5 officers and one of their spouses in the face of allegations of a rampant culture of corruption that includes an unlocked evidence room and even the death of the Huntsville dispatcher, Christopher Michael Willingham, who died from the toxic effects of fentanyl and other drugs.
Nothing was secure about the evidence room, and when Mr. Willingham was discovered, there was evidence in his office. I am not optimistic about the ability to prosecute cases with tampered evidence.
The jury said that based on evidence provided by the State Bureau of Investigation, it believes the department is an ongoing threat to public safety. If the department is closed, the Cullman County Sheriff's Department would take over protection of Huntsville moving forward. The passengers hospitalized after a Delta Airlines plane flipped over on a runway. They've been released. Delta confirming today that 21 people have recovered following the accident in Toronto on Monday. And this is new video of the wreckage, which Canadian officials say has now been moved off the runway to a nearby hangar for further inspection as the investigation ramps up. Delta is offering $30,000 to each passenger who was on that flight, saying the payments don't impact their rights. U.S. airlines are required to pay passengers injured in an airplane accident if the airline determines the money is necessary to cover certain costs. Coming up, the state's getting hit tonight with extreme cold from a record-setting Arctic blast. Then drug overdose deaths, they have dropped, but not everywhere. The states where deaths have actually gone up. And later, an 11-year-old who was left paralyzed by a bullet, not letting that stand in her way. The inspirational story when we come back. Tonight, we continue tracking a winter season for the history books. A record-setting Arctic blast is spanning much of the continental U.S. today. And take a look at this stunning video out of southwest Detroit. A water main break flooding out a neighborhood. That water then freezing into basically a sheet of ice. But the storm we're talking about here, it is peaking, which means calmer days are ahead. It's a system that brought extreme cold to nearly 100 million people and saw 100 daily temperature records broken. Northwest Arkansas saw record-breaking cold overnight, making roads refreeze. Authorities there now urging caution.
We all know what refreeze can do, and so we still got to get through tonight. Tomorrow morning's going to be really, really cold. Nothing's going to thaw. You think, oh, that's clear spot right there, and it's really a quarter of an inch of ice.
The cold snap spreading east today to coastal New England, North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland, and even to northwest Florida, where wind chills will be as low as 12 degrees below tonight into tomorrow morning. 14 Florida counties are under a freeze warning until 9 a.m. The cold is expected to lift by this weekend when a warm front moves in, making temperatures rise by 50 to 70 degrees in some places. And a live look over St. Peter's Square in Vatican City. Pope Francis's condition is getting better. That's good news. New blood tests showing a slight improvement in some inflammation as he recovers from pneumonia. Doctors say pneumonia in both lungs is difficult for such a fragile elderly patient to fight off. But the Vatican says he was able to get out of bed this morning and remains in good spirits. Francis has been hospitalized since Valentine's Day. Tonight, the first dead hostages that have been held by Hamas in Gaza have been returned. Earlier today, the group returned the bodies of 4 people, including 2 small children. Kafir and Ariel Bibas, taken at the ages of 9 months and 4 years old, along with their mother, Shiri Bibas, and the 4th man, Oded Lifshitz, all abducted from their homes during that October 7th attack. This weekend, Hamas is set to return 6 more living hostages, including 2 held in captivity for 10 years. That happening on Saturday. Vice President J.D. Vance addressing the Conservative Political Action Conference known as CPAC in National Harbor, Maryland today. It is the first day of a 4-day conference. Among the many topics the vice president covered is the effort to bring prices down. He admitted it will take time, but their plan starts with the federal cuts that have already been underway.
If we spend the American people's money more wisely, if we stop taxing and spending the American people to death, that's also going to bring relief to all of the pricing pressures that are out there. We're going to make it affordable to live in this country again.
Several conservative leaders will give speeches and hold panels over the next few days before President Donald Trump will close the conference with an address on Saturday night. Nearly 10% of American adults identify as LGBTQ+ as of 2024, and that's according to a new Gallup report. That's a big increase since 2012, when Gallup started keeping track of those numbers. The change was driven by young people and bisexual women. Almost a quarter of Gen Z adults, those born in 1997 or later, say they are LGBTQ. The percentage of people identifying as transgender more than doubled since 2020 to 1.3%. Fatal drug overdoses dropped across the country by 4% in 2023 from 2022. That's according to the latest numbers out of the CDC. But while overall death rates decreased, several states on the West Coast, including Alaska and Hawaii, as well as Alabama, saw a rise in their deaths. Another highlight from the study, in Maine, while the fatality rate fell, it remains the second highest in the country, now behind Alaska. Taking a look at your health, a new report from the American Cancer Society says cancer death rates are not equal in all populations. Medical reporter Liz Bonas takes a look at what the latest research reveals.
So we're talking about cancer in the African American community.
It's one of the reasons Brent Billingsley, or artist Mr. B, meets regularly with young people to talk about cancer prevention.
It's something that impacts us and many of our loved ones.
Brent is currently undergoing radiation therapy for a mass on his neck that turned out to be throat cancer.
I can't taste nothing. Everything has a sandy, gritty, ridiculously non-flavorful feel, but that's okay because I'm still here, right?
His type of cancer on the rise due to the climb in HPV-related cancers. That same virus linked to cervical cancer, one of those also now on the list of lower survival in those who are African American compared to those who are white. The others include blood cancers such as myeloma, prostate cancer, endometrial cancer, stomach, colorectal, breast, and liver cancers. As to why, Dr. Buhari Muhammad tells me one of the main barriers.
We know about the historic mistrust that is going on in the medical field here, right?
Access to care where Black people feel comfortable. We need to create, he says, for
a safe space for people who look like me to be seeing clinicians who look like me to take care of them.
American Cancer Society Regional Board Member Dr. Doug Flora told me he agrees.
You know, our tagline is, for everyone. We're trying to buy more holidays and more good memories for people so that they don't have cancers. Unfortunately, we're not reaching everyone equally.
Brent Billingsley says survivors also need to step up.
I can see the finish line, baby, let's go.
With a message that early detection saves lives.
That was Liz Bonus reporting. And coming up, workers at the most visited national park are concerned about federal staffing cuts, what they fear could happen. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in North Carolina with concerns about the impact of federal staffing cuts on the Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Smoky's Life CEO Jacqueline Harp heads up Smoky's Life, one of 4 nonprofit partners to the park. She's aware of the Trump administration's plans to terminate about 1,000 newly hired Park Service employees nationwide, unsure just yet of the impact in the Smokies.
In terms of a number, I can't speak to that today.
Smoky's Life supports scientific, historical, and interpretive activities. She says even before this announcement, the park's been facing challenges from the roughly 12 million on average who visit every year.
No secret that there has been, deteriorating staffing as the appropriations haven't kept up. There is a massive deferred maintenance backlog.
But Harp worries less staff will cause more stress. Impacts could mean trash buildup, issues with restroom cleanup.
A Pierce County Sheriff's Deputy's lapel video shows the race to save a driver who plowed through someone's backyard fence and into multiple trees.
The vehicle was catching fire.
Spokesperson Carly Capetto explains the driver first passed a deputy while eastbound on 128th Street. The deputy reportedly opted to not pursue a chase due to the dangerously high speeds estimated above 100 miles an hour. Capetto explains the lithium-ion batteries in electric vehicles present an increased risk for fires after a crash. That gives first responders limited time to help people who may be trapped in a car.
We usually only have seconds to help victims in these vehicles when they do catch fire.
In this case, a deputy tried to get the man out of the car after smashing through the driver's side window, but we're told flames had already engulfed the vehicle.
11-year-old Amaya's not letting her new reality stop her.
I told her she's my hero because, like, this is something major, and she has not given up.
On New Year's Eve, an unknown suspect fired through a window in East Columbus, shooting Amaya and her 13-year-old sister, Star. After 46 days in Nationwide Children's Hospital, Amaya's home.
How do you feel, Maya?
I feel okay.
Some people might have been like, okay, I'm paralyzed. Like, I hate life. I don't want to go on. No. She accepts the fact, okay, I'm paralyzed, but there's still more to life. I can still go to Target. I can still go to the mall. I can still do everything I was doing before, just in a different way.
How about that for Inspirational? And coming up, it is a welcome distraction from the cold. We are talking spring break destinations. Which U.S. state will dominate on this year's top 10 list? AAA has released its list of top spring break destinations travelers are booking this year. And perhaps no surprise that the time-honored tradition of heading to the Sunshine State, it is continuing. Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and Tampa all made the top 10. But for those who are flying, it is going to cost. The average price for those flying domestic is $820. Yes, that is a fact. And for international travel, yeah, even more, $1,400. Let's just say the post-pandemic boom is still in effect. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.